Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And if you like what I talk about each week in these podcasts, and I presume you do, unless it's the first time you've heard them and then everything to play for, I encourage you to check out our Inner Circle Platinum at michaelneill.org/Inner Circle. And it's our one-stop shop on the web for the inside-out understanding, for what I have found to be what I share as simply a better way to live in the world that allows you to be more effective and feel better, have less stress and less pressure and less strain, and more joy and more delight and more connection and more love. So you can find out more at michaelneill.org/Inner Circle. And the title for today's episode comes from, unsurprisingly, the movie Mary Poppins. And I'm assuming everybody's still seen Mary Poppins, even though it's like generations old. It's one of those stories that seems to not go away. And if you don't remember it, it's the movie version, the original movie version was with Dick Van Dyke and Julie Andrews. And in case you're like me and you're American and perhaps haven't seen as much of the world as you might have done, turns out Dick Van Dyke's not actually British. Like, I didn't know that till I went to England to study at drama school, and I was shocked when I sort of was doing my best Dick Van Dyke, "All right, governor," kind of accent, and everyone said, "You sound like Dick Van Dyke," and I was like, "Thank you," and they were like, "No, that was an insult." And but the point of the story isn't really that. There's a scene in the movie where Dick Van Dyke, he's kind of a jack of all trades, and he's drawing chalk drawings on the sidewalk. And the children, Jane and Michael, are with their nanny, Mary Poppins. And Mary and Bert have a bit of a thing. You know, it's just implied, but you can kind of tell. And you know, the kids are kind of enthralled with the pictures. And Dick Van Dyke says, "Well, which one's your favorite?" I think it's Michael who picks out one that is kind of, there's like a picture of a merry-go-round and set in the middle of a field. Dick Van Dyke says, "Okay, shall we?" And Mary Poppins snaps her fingers and they all jump into the chalk picture. And they find themselves, suddenly the movie changes from realistic to cartoon. And so Dick Van Dyke and the kids and Mary Poppins are still look like humans, but they're now against a cartoon backdrop. And Dick Van Dyke does a dance with some cartoon penguins, and they ride their horses, and then they actually take their horses off the merry-go-round and start riding them through the field, and they get caught up in a fox hunt. And when it's all, then it starts to rain, and it all starts to get a bit dark and nightmarish. And, you know, just when you think, oh no, what's going to happen? They just step back out of the painting, and they're back on the sidewalk, and they carry on with their lives. And that's one of the best metaphors that I have ever seen for how our personal realities are created. We live in a world of thought. If you think of the power of thought like a piece of chalk, you can draw anything with it. You can draw monsters or you can draw magic. You can draw beauty or you can draw horror. And then, like Jane and Michael and Mary Poppins and Bert, we hop into the picture and start living inside that thought-created world as if it's real. And there will be things about it that are delightful. But at some point, it always turns a bit dark. And when you're spending too much time in there, if you try to solve it from within the chalk drawing, you're never going to get out of there. But in any moment, you can just pop back out of the painting and create something new. And my favorite way I've ever written about this was in one of my early books, and I've shared this in the podcast before, but I'm just going to read you this story. "Imagine you're dreaming, the most incredibly vivid dream of your life," began the teacher. "In the dream, you seem to be some sort of an adventurer, and each adventure brings with it new challenges and creative solutions. You experience many things, some wonderful and some not so wonderful. You soon realize that in your dream, anything is possible. On one of your adventures, you encounter a very high wall, so you imagine yourself a rope and climb to the top. In another, you're falling off a cliff, but before you reach the ground, you begin to fly. Eventually, you begin to look forward to each new adventure until one time, For no apparent reason, everything seems to go wrong. It's dark, so dark that you cannot see your hand before your face. Even before you can hear or see anything, you sense danger. Strange and uncomfortable sounds begin crawling out from the depths of your imagination and seem to be coming closer to you. Cautiously, you strike a match. Everywhere you look, you're surrounded by the most hideous creatures you've ever seen. You try to run, but your legs won't move. You open your mouth to scream, but no sound comes out. Everything you've learned up to this point seems to have abandoned you, and a horrific death seems imminent. What would you do? The student was lost in thought for many moments, and the teacher could see a range of fearful emotions play across her face as she lived the scenario fully in her mind. Suddenly, and without warning, she opened her eyes and began to laugh. "I know what I would do," the student said. "I would wake up." Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll talk with you soon.